Hey everyone, it's Imanee Mamalution from Haven Earth. Happy solstice. I am super excited to bring on a special guest that I've been working with the last couple months as I'm trying to figure out some of the things around food security, which I know many of you are also interested in. So I'm really happy to have Lucinda here from Texas Ready, which I just did. I kind of unboxed the big vault I got, Lucinda, which is a non-GMO heirloom seeds that feeds up to 30 adults in 1 year. And I wanted to really dive in. We've done some videos. I'm going to be coming up and checking out your homesteading course. But there's a lot to this conversation to unpack around really true sovereignty, which begins with the seeds and the soil, and actually how we move into what you're coining using this Mittleider method, which I want to dive into, is sort of like this kind of survival gardening, and how do we actually produce enough food to feed us as many more people move to the land. We're returning to the land. We're trying to figure this out. So welcome. It's so exciting to have you here. I'm going to figure out getting your name on there because it disappeared, but just so happy to have you here on the show.
It's our privilege. Texas Ready is delighted to be partnering with you for this educational opportunity for your constituents. And it's our goal that anybody that wants to be growing food, that they would be able to accomplish that goal.
So Lucinda, just a little background on you. How long have you been doing this? I know you've been teaching gardening, and I just want to break down like how you actually came to one of the books that was in here. All my books. So Mittleider Gardening course, and I'll put some of this in the chat. But how did you come to the conclusion that this was going to be the most, when I saw in your garden, effective, efficient, and producing the most amount of food? And then we'll talk about like how much food do we really need to be producing?
That's a great question. I've been gardening since I was 4.5 years old. My very first job was to have a half-acre plot and then sell those vegetables to my neighbors. So I've been doing this a very long time. I was even teaching at a community college level. I taught 39 methods of gardening, and yet they all had their pros and cons. But I knew that it was not the holy grail of gardening. So I kept crying out to the Lord to direct my path and introduce me to that which is going to work during a survival crisis, economic upturn, political, whatever, that storm that we might go to. I was kind of tipped off 15 years ago that things were moving that direction. So I was very anxious to support my own family, and then consequently train others to do it for their own church, community, neighborhood, whatever. So in addition to buying land, I kept searching for the holy grail of gardening. And I believe that God has directed me to that. And the garden method was so superior to everything I had been doing. I had even been teaching the organic farmers from Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. I taught them how to taught the professional commercial tomato growers how to double their tomato production. So I really felt like I was contributing to the organic farmers. And of course, beautiful, nutritious, healthy dirt without pesticides and things like that. That was always a target. But I knew that in the harsh environment of Texas, Arizona, Nevada, et cetera, we were looking at 7 to 10 years to get the dirt just right so we could produce all the calories that we would need. So we took a back engineering approach. How many calories does a adult need? And then we worked back from there to determine which method was going to actually work. And since most of my friends did not store up 7 years worth of dehydrated, freeze-dried, et cetera, food, I don't think that's a very realistic target. It's very expensive to do that, nor do they have the skills to can all that much food. We had to find something that was going to produce initially for the people that, like you and your team, are concerned about food production. We couldn't wait 7 years because they didn't have the supplies to, stay alive during that 7-year period. So we needed something that was going to be easy. It was going to be universally appropriate, Maine, Arizona, Florida, Oregon, et cetera. And there are some great garden methods out there, but if they're only regionally appropriate, we couldn't use them with Texas Ready because our constituents are the 48 contiguous states. So this Mittleider method had been demonstrated for over 50 years worldwide, any weather pattern, any soil pattern, and for that, we were very excited. Plus, the production was quantifiable. This is an organic method, and we can demonstrate that because every ingredient that we add in terms of nutrition can be purchased in the allowed list of products that an organic farmer must use, or he cannot call himself organic.
Yeah, I know that's one of the things that comes up with the Mittleider gardening method, and I'm glad that you addressed that. Lucinda, when you talk about the amount of food, what are we really talking about as far as per person and really sustaining? And I love that you outline like this idea of how long food takes to grow. There are some trees and fruit trees and things like that that you can get production off quickly, but for those that are starting to homestead, and there are a lot of people that are just doing this, getting started, saying, you know, they know now what you knew 15 years ago, and they're just starting out. What are we looking at as far as that? Because a lot of us have been like maybe hobby gardening, right? And not thinking about production.
That's right. It takes about 1 million calories per adult. And if you have a teenage boy, it might be a little bit more. And that really breaks down to about 2,800 calories, 2,800 calories per person. That sounds like a lot more, and it is more than what we're eating now. But if you, if we're going to be food producing, we're going to be outdoors, building fences, having livestock, et cetera, that we're not actually doing those kind of activities now. So we're going to need to have a good supply of calories on hand. So that our nutrition is high, so that we can maintain good wellness and health. So 2,800 calories, and that is not unreasonable. If you were to look at the Army manual on what does it take to feed the troops in the course of battle, you're going to be looking at 3,500 calories on the low end, all the way up to 6,500 calories daily at the high end. So we don't feel like we're unreasonable in saying that we ought to target the 2,800 calories per day.
Sorry, muted my mic for a second. That's quite a bit of food. So we're talking about and I know with you, you're doing the gardening as well as the other homesteading. I'm just going to show like all the books that came in. I don't have all of them, but this one I love, the Backyard Homestead. You got the Vegetable Gardener's Bible, and then of course Seed to Seed, because one of the things that you're talking about, and Vandana Shiva talks about this, right? I mean, the seed banks, like how do we actually save the seeds so that we're not having to buy seeds every year? Because that might not be an option.
Might not be an option. And most of the Lowe's, Home Depot, box stores, et cetera, many feed stores, you only have a choice of hybrid varieties. Or in many cases, although it is a law that heirloom must be on the label, hybrid must be on the label, most seed packets don't follow that, and consequently consumers are confused. I mean, there are 10,000 different kinds of tomatoes at least. And so, which ones are heirlooms that are going to universally work? So we've done that research and that background. We've put together a nutritional personal seed bank. I mean, everybody knows about the Norwegian seed bank that's run by the United Nations. Believe me, if your name isn't Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, you are not getting access to that in times of crisis. So we have got to maintain our own personal family seed banks, and it has to be done with heirloom seeds. Now, hybrids are very productive. And in a perfect economy, I would recommend that people grow with hybrids because they're really going to be twice as productive as heirlooms on average. However, there are 3 poor outcomes. And for those of us that are believing we're going to food production is going to fall into our own lap, and we're not going to have access at feed stores and Lowe's or Home Depot, then the 3 outcomes that are very poor options for hybrids would be about 50% of year 2 seed is going to be sterile like a mule. So that's not useful. And it may even come up, and it may even, the zucchini may waste 4 square feet in your garden, and now you're not getting any food production out of it. It's a very bad outcome. 25% are mutants. You plant a cucumber, but you get a gourd. That's not going to help your family. And then the third outcome is that 25% would revert up the genetic chain. And tomatoes are famous for this. You have a volunteer tomato that's dropped in your garden the next year. You notice 15 different seedlings and you go to replant them, but you've got 15 different types of tomatoes because these seeds have reverted up that genetic chain. So those are unstable methods of having a continuous food supply. So we encourage people to bypass the hybrids and go directly to the heirlooms. These are the most stable of the stabilized seeds. An open pollinated variety is one that's been around at least 8 generations, where you get the same thing that's on the seed packet that you initially planted. Hybrids don't do that, but open pollinated will. And if that has been going on for at least 25 garden generations, now we can call it an heirloom. So you can see that those are the most stable of the stable seeds. So that's why Texas Ready only packages in our personal seed banks those heirloom seeds.
And, we're going to be doing an ongoing conversation. I know today this is our first, so we had some technology challenges, and I don't know why our names aren't appearing, but if anybody just tuned in, this is Lucinda from Texas Ready at texasready.com. My comments are disabled, but this video will be out to all of our members and on our Haven Earth Network platform. So if you're just tuning in and you want resources, and we're going to do, Lucinda and I are planning a monthly kind of like Ask Lucinda Q&A that we'll be doing for our members. And you can go to havenearth.net to get this video and to also be able to be in the ongoing conversation. So if you're out there getting your hands in the dirt, one of the things I love about you, Lucinda, is that you're just wanting to help everybody succeed in the garden. And you've just been really generous with your time, your resources. And you guys are really providing a quality product. I mean, what you're doing with these seeds. And I love, in addition that they come into a actual ammo box for up to 2 people, 6, I think 8, 12, whatever. I got the big box for the 30 adults, but there's different sizes that people can get on wherever they are on their journey or the size of their family to actually get started and really get their hands in the dirt. But you're always available to share with people what's working, what's not.
So Imanee, I'm having trouble hearing you at this point.
Oh no. Can you hear me now?
All right. Can you hear me now, Imanee?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. The reason that we have various size kits is important because one size does not fit all situations. So most of the other seed banks on the market are going to be one size. Now, the problem is that if you are a family of 4 and you have purchased somebody else's seed bank, okay, you're probably going to be okay. But if you're the type that is big-hearted and you open your door to other people to come onto your property, or you're going to be providing food for the neighbor across the street, et cetera, and you don't have the initial seed to get that going, now you all get to starve equally. So that's not a good consequence. So it's very important that we establish in our mind who is it that we're going to be providing for, and then make sure that you have enough seed for that size group. And if you've never gardened before, we recommend that you just have a little extra buffer for that practice that does, it will be a consequence of starting gardening.
Yeah, definitely buffer recommended. I think right now the stocking up of seeds, and we had talked about this on one of our videos, just for those people that are storing seeds. Can you just go over that piece on appropriate storage, keeping them at the right temperature, not freezing the seed that would be more fragile? That's right.
This was such an important question to us that I actually went to the United States Seed Saving Lab up in Fort Collins, Colorado, to get the answer, just confirm what we had already been telling our customers. And thankfully, I've been telling them appropriately, because on the internet, you're going to find a whole range of answers. Now, I know all the owners of these seed companies, so Some of them aren't even growers. So, just like if you had a well that was going to be dug, all your well diggers know the honorable and integrous, other well diggers. And so in this industry, we know all the players and their honorability and their truthfulness. So you're going to get a wide range of answers, some of which are either the people are ignorant that are giving those answers, or they're deceptive. And it doesn't matter. It's a bad outcome if you follow the wrong information. But you're going to see answers that are kind of crazy, 10 years, all the way I've seen 50. And those things are just inappropriate for what we're talking about. This is a collection of 70 seeds. Yeah, one seed might last 16 years, but that doesn't mean that all 70 are going to follow suit. So 4 to 6 years is the range that the U.S. Department of Agriculture says would be appropriate if the seeds are stored at 40 degrees. That is the cranky refrigerator in the garage for beer and parties. So it's very important to store your seed at that temperature range to get the maximum germination longevity. So some people have said, oh, I should stick everything in the freezer. Well, it is true. Peas, bean, corn, the heavier bodied seeds do very well in a frozen environment. But your lettuces and your herbs and many other seeds that are in that 70 variety plus kit, they don't do so well. There is always a measure of moisture that is left into the seed as it goes into storage, whether that's 9% or 14%, it varies. Okay, when water is frozen, it expands. And now the hull of that poor little herb seed could be fractured, decreasing your germination. So to be safe, the USDA recommends 40 degrees. So that's the perfect environment. And with the ammo cans, they all come with a moisture seal. And of course, we have them bagged in the 4 mil plastic that is also recommended by Suzanne Ashworth in the book Seed to Seed, as well as the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So we're using that's it. That's a very technical book, but very important. You need that in your reference library. There are maybe 7 or 8 different seed saving books out there. A couple of them I would use for coloring books for my grandchildren. They're just not academically, up to snuff. They have a lot of discussion about flower seeds and so forth. And I think that's nice to have aesthetics, but my focus is food and food preservation for taking care of business in a down economy. So I'm not that interested in chapters on flowers. This book is a technically accurate and it is actually, Suzanne Ashworth has 3 master's degrees in agriculture. She's known as the world's expert on seed saving. So I'm going to follow her.
That sounds like great advice. And I think you're giving us all some really good advice just from what you've learned hands-on in not just teaching, but actually growing food. So when I came out, you have your homestead. You guys are doing a kind of your weekly gardening homesteading group. And then you have ongoing classes, not just about growing in the Mittleider method. The one that I'll be doing is about the growing of food, but you're also doing other homesteading stuff, which is things that we can definitely dive into and future conversations. But I mean, can you do a little bit more of describing what you would say the difference in the Mittleider, other than what its production capacity is? But you had said to me, it's like hydroponic in soil.
That's right. It has that kind of nickname and reputation. So we all know that fixing dirt, the organic people would be, strongly in that system. And Garden of Eden, Keo Garden, all those kind of things are, let's have pretty dirt and we will get great results. And I understand that. And I can make pretty dirt. But again, it's a long process if you're living in the desert. If you're up in Michigan, where you have 22 feet of native topsoil, you might be a little bit okay, and so forth. The second method of gardening, and all agriculture falls in these 2 camps, fixing the dirt or feeding the plant. And so your hydroponic people are feeding the roots of those plants by introducing chemistry into the water, nutrition into the water, supplementation into that water. Of course, you have to order that through Pony Express and so forth. in a down economy, can you be assured that you're going to get ongoing amounts of that liquid? Big question. Dirt hydroponics takes that same principle, dirt hydroponics or the Mittleider garden course, that's really the same. We are going to top dress the soil, and we are going to feed the plant everything that it needs in the time frame that it requires it and in the amount that it needs it. We're not going to toxify the soil. We want the soil to become completely neutral at the end of a week. And we want that plant, see, plants only receive inorganic material. They do not receive organic material. So all my friends that are in the purely organic breakdown and let's have nice compost environment, they don't realize that it takes several weeks for that nutrition to be released to where that the plant roots can actually uptake those elements. So this method, like I said, it's specifically useful for survival mentality, and it does not toxify the soil in the least. All the ingredients in our top-dressed supplementation can be purchased through the organic manuals called the OMRI, O-M-R-I, Directory of Allowable Products. So we would say that, yes, we're using the same stuff that an organic farmer would use, but we're using it in smaller, more repetitive quantities so that the plants can uptake the nutrition on a weekly basis because they need daily input of the nutrition. And most farmers will supplement early in the spring, and you can talk to master gardeners or organic farmers and they go, oh yeah, I did my amendments, I tilled them in. I hear that all the time. Okay, that's nice. Now what are you doing 2 weeks in to fruit production? Well, they need nutrition. Hence our weekly additions of nutrition that we water into the root zone. We don't want to water the aisles. We don't want to put nutrition or fertilizer or plant supplements in where the weeds might grow. We simply want to take care of business with the plants. So it's cheaper, it's more strategic, and it prevents a lot of weed pulling that's unnecessary. So the methodology says we are going to feed that plant everything that it needs. And the beautiful thing is, all ag schools teach this. We know the 17 elements that are essential for that plant health. And if we provide those, then that plant is going to be able to produce at the top capacity that seed was constructed by God for. So that is the difference in the methodology. Most of the organic people have no idea what they're putting onto it, when they're putting onto it, and what it's accomplishing for the plants. How much does that plant need? And so we are able to grow in a three-dimensional manner in very tight, we know that pole beans, we only put 1 inch apart. We know bush beans, we only put 2 inches apart. It is that exacting. And Mittleider, being German, is a pretty precise guy.
I am German, and that makes sense. I love the strategy, the efficiency, and what I'm hearing is the consistency, but it's also the knowledge of knowing what to do. And I think that's why I'm feeling slightly obsessed about creating like this, formula for people. And you've already done it, like to extract this from you, simplify this formula that like, okay, what do we need to do? What are the steps we need to do for this exit strategy, survival gardening, to have this predictable production?
That's
and
right.
I think you have such an easy to understand way of breaking it down. Now I'm moving into that phase of going to be building it out and learning, like kind of diving into that. But the hope is to actually be getting my hands in the dirt on some of these Haven Earth hubs that we're working with and sharing the knowledge that you have, Lucinda. There's a couple of things that I know we're coming at the end of the half hour here, but I wanted to go back to compost, as everybody's obsessed with compost and that, and then also ask you a question about the hydroponic gardening only, because a lot of people are, and not just individuals, but we're moving toward this way of creating food that's towers in cities, the aquaponic or hydroponic gardening method. And, if we don't have access to what we need to grow that way, it could present an interesting situation. I thought that was a really great point.
Right. And your aquaponics or hydroponics have a couple other drawbacks. You'll never get to the caloric level that you need in order to, get up to that 2,600 calories by using those methods, because they don't do root crops very well. And so the roots are where all the carbohydrates are. You've got your beetroot, your carrots, your potatoes, your sweet potatoes, etc. But that's where we're going to get the nutrition to help us live another day. You can get leafy lettuce, you can get tomatoes, you can get melons out of hydroponics, but that also presumes that you have an energy supply that's readily available, which may or may not be true. And so Texas Ready basically said, hey, no utilities, no access to additional plant nutrition, no access to purchasing seeds. What are we going to do? So it was like the bleakest of possibilities. So it was from that basis that we designed our Texas Ready growing system. And in the class that you're going to be a guest at, we tell you exactly how many plants that you need to plant at a certain time of the year. And we tell you exactly how many pounds you should, is going to be produced. And you saw our tomatoes were probably on track between 4,000 and 5,000 pounds of tomatoes this year. And you saw the amazing difference. We don't grow tomato bushes, we grow tomatoes. So through our pruning system that is part of the Mittleider Garden course, we can challenge that plant to put all its energy into food production, as opposed to growing, tentacles and leaves and things like that. But it was just tomato, every 4 inches all the way up the 7-foot stalk. And we are harvesting about 100 pounds every 3 or 4 days right now. So it's really on track.
Yeah. So are you composting? What's the deal with the compost? How do you?
That is a great question. And composting is a interesting method. Again, it works well if you've got that 7-year window to transform the backyard into a wonderful black, rich dirt. But the problem with compost is you have no idea what is in that mix. And every time you do a compost heap, you're going to get a different recipe. And these plants have such a tight recipe for receiving nutrition that we can't rely on something that we really don't know the chemistry of. So in the Mittleider method, we know exactly what the plant needs. Now, for example, boron is needed in the amount of 4 to 6 parts per million. At 7 parts per million, it's toxic to the plant. So we can't be messing around. These are very exact things. And so we have put together, I went ahead and got a master's degree equivalent in soil science, okay? Because I know I needed to know this for my own family, but I needed to be accurate when describing Mittleider method as opposed to these other 39 methods that everybody's heard about. And then I went on and also got a certified crop advisor certification, which is very similar to a CPA in accounting. You've got your bookkeepers, you've got your accountants, and then you have your CPAs, which would be a whole nother level. So I've got that kind of background. And so it made it pretty easy for us. We have a packet about this size.
Minerals, right?
It's the minerals, right. And so this little packet will produce 4,400 pounds of food adequately.
That comes in the kits.
It comes in the 6-person on up kits, 6-person, 12-person, 30-person kits. Now, of course, you can purchase those independently, but having all those plant minerals, you cannot walk into Ace Hardware and go, I need a pound of nickel, I need a pound of molybdenum. By the way, that's over $100 per pound right now. So these things are trace elements, that's true. And you're never going to get the production that you need without these trace elements. And your compost heap is going to be a different configuration of those 17 elements if you even have the ability. Some locations in our country do not have boron present or do not have manganese present. And so you can be a good girl chopping off the tops of your carrots and recirculating everything and composting.
Just
But
feed them to the pigs, right?
that's right. But if your property did not have manganese, you've got to have an input so that there can be that element. And if without one of the 17 essential elements, you will never get to the full production that those seeds are capable of producing for your family. So that's what we said. We back engineered everything. We know what the plant's requirements nutritively are. And so we space our seedlings accordingly. So at the end of the week, those plants have drawn all that nutrition into their food production. And we're not over toxifying the soil, but we're making sure the plants get just what they need. So that is the main difference between this system and other systems, because you have no idea what that plant is high in, low in, lacking, and if you do not have, for example, calcium is the catalyst that drives all the transactions in a plant, whether it's putting on new leaves, it's putting on flowers, it's fruiting, it's developing seeds or whatever. If calcium is not resident, these activities are not going to be done well at all, if at all. So that's what I like about the Mittleider method, is it's a predictable way of growing. I want to know if I've invested a half hour a day to garden and I'm watering, etc. I've invested a lot of money. I want to know at the end of the day, I'm getting a bushel of beans. Right. And this is the only method that, to my knowledge, that's quantifiably predictable. And we're going to need to know to feed the number of people that we have, in our
well, I'm so grateful for our connection, Lucinda. I feel like I struck gold when I found you or discovered you. So
we love your people.
Yeah, it's been amazing, and I just really want to have this ongoing discourse of conversation and get what you're doing and to as many people as possible. I don't know. I mean, we're kind of new in our relationship. I don't know if you knew I have 6 kids that I homeschooled in my organic cafe for a decade in Connecticut. So I've always been really passionate about food. And I don't know if I gave you a copy of my book yet, but the Absence, Presence of Soil. So I'll bring one for you when I see you this week.
Oh, I love it. Great.
But it was really about my it's a rant 10 years ago that understanding that if we didn't have soil and we wouldn't be growing food, that wherever that was taking us. So that was kind of my epiphany of where we were going. The realization 10 years ago, and have gone down the path of, surrounding myself and understanding what's happening with the food, but really moving into this phase of growing and securing these lands so that we can be producing the food. So I rewrote it last year with an updated version because it's connected so many more dots. But I think that this is the most important conversation of our times,
If we can get the food right, then we are going to have healthy animals. And that cycle of animal husbandry and harvesting your own animals and so forth is just going to improve the circle. If we have healthy food, we're going to be less prone to disease and less susceptible to the things that are coming down in our culture, which we feel like sometimes that we have no control about it. That's not the truth. In Genesis, it says, I've given you the seed. That means that God has given us the means of production. The Bible also says that my people perish for lack of knowledge. Well, thankfully, that knowledge is now at our fingertips. And we've read over 300 ag books in order to get down to the 6 or 7 books that we can recommend. And so if you go to our website, www.texasready.net, spell it all out,
.net, okay.
ASREADY.net, then you'll see the library, the essential library that we believe is going to get you through the food production challenge that we're all facing, because it looks like we are all going to have to do our own food production in order to make sure that our food is mineralized. Mineralized food is going to be high in the BRICS index, meaning that it's completely nutrient dense. And when you have those kind of products in your garden, you will eat less. So it's just a beautiful thing. Eat better, protect your health, and then you're not going to have to grow as much.
Well, Lucinda from texasready.net, I just want to make sure, because I think I've said .com a couple of times, but I really appreciate everything that you're sharing. I can't wait to learn more and more from you on an ongoing basis and see you this week. And for everyone that's tuning in, definitely go and check out texasready.net, put the link in there as well. And there's going to be more to come, because we're just on the beginning of this journey, and just really appreciate you.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Imanee.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in.